Here we go. Welcome to another episode of Double Dribble Bucks. I'm Seth Peterson. With me is, as always, Brett Sand. What's going on tonight, Brett?
What is up, Seth? Went from feeling really down about the Bucks to having some optimism. So I'm excited to see kind of what we can talk about heading into the final stretch. 2 games left, and feeling better than I did, I have to say, maybe 3-4 days ago.
Yeah, it's been a real roller coaster of emotions for sure. This team's the worst. There's no chance they're going to do anything. Now we're feeling a little bit better. We got Giannis to be concerned about. There's a lot going on, so let's jump into it.
Okay.
First thing I wanted to touch on is I'm wondering if Doc listened to our last podcast because we talked about like 5 things that we wanted to see change in the playoffs. And he hit on 2 of those real strongly by doing something against the Celtics when he started Pat Bev in place of Malik Beasley. And one of the things we said was, don't treat Beasley like a starter. And he took that literally as like, you're not starting. So that was awesome. And then at the same time, I said, stop playing Pat Bev at point guard. And you agreed with that as well. And if he's in there with Dame, then he's not playing point guard. And that also means, unless you're going to play him 20 plus minutes a half, that means he's not going to be leading the second unit as the point guard, which was kind of one of the main issues, at least that I was having with him. So Doc solves all those problems by starting Pat Bev. What do you think about that? Is that a good way to solve those 2 things that we talked about?
Well, first of all, I mean, obviously Doc listens to the pod because why wouldn't he? I mean, it's the #1 Bucks podcast for as far as I know. So he's clearly listening. But yeah, I was very shocked to see him actually doing some of the things that we had talked about because, the Beasley thing, #1, it was like, yes, he not only didn't start him, but it was like Beasley kind of also like clearly listens as well because he kind of took the message to be like, I got to do more. In the last 2 games, he's been not just sitting out on 3-point land. He's been, driving. He's been getting some rebounds. I mean, tonight he was fighting for rebounds on the free throw attempts. So he was on a different level. And then, Pat Bev like really seemed to have found his fit. I don't know that he's going to start all the time because, when our starters are fully healthy, I don't know that it makes sense. The Boston one, it did. Tonight, we couldn't get to see, the encore to see, let's see how that goes in a second game. But yeah, he doesn't need to be, we talked about before, running the show as the point guard. He can still dribble. He can still set up shots. He was way better as like, dishing it out to somebody that was more open. He got the memo. Everyone seemed to be clicking. And I don't know. I mean, #1, we saw a lot of energy coming out of the Boston game. That was apparent. But I mean, these lineup changes, this is the stuff that we've been screaming for, where it's like, if you're going to be having a problem and you're going to fix it, this is where it starts. Change up your lineups, change up your starting 5, see if there's different chemistry that's going to affect the game. And we clearly saw from a Boston game, it seemed to work really well. And then you look at Orlando tonight and, there were some injuries. So obviously that was a little bit beyond the control, but another very successful game with mixing up your starters. So he might be onto something. I mean, I hope I hope he's more open to this. This is the biggest knock that we had on Bud, is that he would be unwilling to make changes, it seemed. And so maybe we're starting to see that from Doc. I sure hope so, at least.
Yeah, I mean, I love the concept. I love the idea. I'm really glad he did it. And we'll just have to see how it plays out. But if Pat Bev can hit threes a little bit, he was 32% is what I mentioned in the last podcast. That's what he's shooting. That's not good enough. And you could see the Celtics knew that he was shooting 32% because they were really leaving him open and kind of daring him to shoot. And he hit enough shots in that game against the Celtics. I think he made 3 or 4 threes. So if he can hit enough threes, that's perfect. We get his defensive energy that I think is very helpful with that defensive unit with Dame as the other guard in the backcourt. And like I said, in the second unit, you're not relying on Pat Bev running the show, which just doesn't work that well. So, and yeah, in that Celtics game, I thought Pat Bev was great. There was one time where he took a three with like 16 seconds left on the shot clock. I'm like, don't take that shot. You're not a good 3-point shooter. There's no reason to take that shot. He wasn't even, it wasn't like a wide up, spot up shot. It was kind of a quick catch and shoot. It's just if he doesn't do that, he does good things. Two times he cut to the basket at the perfect time and got a wide open layup, which I don't remember Beasley doing that much. Like, would Beasley have made those cuts? I'm not so sure. So at least in that Boston game, it worked great. I love the concept. So I think it's going to help. I think it's going to work. And again, I think it's really not just about the starting lineup, but about the rotations throughout the game.
Yeah, definitely. Before the Boston game, Doc said that confidence was sky high, which is, obviously you want to hear that. That's great. But before that, if you hadn't been listening to some of the stuff Giannis had said, I really like the way he kind of, I don't want to say dumbed it down, but the way that he worded it with the media, where he goes, when's the last time you saw Beasley do this? And he did like his hip shake. And he's like, when's the last time you saw, Crowder, kissing his biceps? And when's the last time and it's like all of the swagger and the energy that this team had has been gone during this losing streak. And it shows that a huge part of it is so much mental. And whether it's the lineup, the confidence, the whatever, that's the type of stuff that, I think we had a lot of optimism with Doc to be like building that up when it's like, yeah, okay, you're having a bad game or you're having a rough stretch. Who's going to come in and kind of help you correct it by saying like, all right, look, we are super talented. Let's go out there and have that combination of fun, but energy. And, that's what you have. And sure enough, Boston game, they come out just swinging. And it was just like they could not miss. I mean, Brook in the first quarter looked like he was clearly going to be the MVP of the league. It was just like, guy couldn't miss. He was blocking everything. He was getting rebounds. He was just like a monster out there. It's like, what is happening? So it's like, it gives you that renewed faith to be like, all right, this team really can measure up with anybody. The stat that I saw was something along the lines of, in the two games that we lost against Boston, we've lost by both those games by a combined 6 points, but we've won both games against them by over 50 points. So when we win, we blow them out. When we lose, we barely lose. And you could take that a little bit, with a grain of salt, though, because we did have that one game where all game we were absolutely getting crushed. And we did come back, still lost by 3, and there was a shot attempt to take it to overtime. I mean, technically, yeah, that was just a 3-point loss, but we really weren't in that game. They were kind of resting guys, and there were some people still out there, but it's nice to get that energy up. It's the type of stuff that you want to see heading into the playoffs. As much as a win streak means something, having that energy and that confidence is something else that I think is great to see.
Yeah. The other thing I wanted to mention with Beasley is he just has a 1-year contract for what, $2.8 million, just something like, I don't know if that's the minimum, but close to the minimum, if not the minimum. And he's not old. Like, he's playing to make a lot of money next year. And he was having a very good year until this last month. It seems like he's kind of slumped, and now he just lost his starting spot. So I wonder if that's another, I would guess that's not part of Doc's thinking, but maybe that's another just motivator for him to kind of step it up in the playoffs. If he plays well in the playoffs, he's going to make a lot of money just by doing that. And if he plays poorly, he's going to lose a lot of money. So there's kind of a lot on the line for him just personally with his next contract that he's going to get. So hopefully that's a motivating factor for him to, first of all, give 100% effort all the time and, do all the little things, especially defensively and cutting on offense and doing everything and not just relying on making 3-pointers. Because when the 3-pointer is not falling, like, what else are you doing? And that's kind of been the thing with Beasley, is it doesn't seem like he's giving much to the team. Like, he's not bad. He's not a huge negative, but he's also not doing much. He's not a great defender. He's just kind of there filling a spot,
Well, I'm
Go
sorry.
ahead.
Did you perceive the thing that Speaking of Beasley, did you happen to see Nate Robinson's interview that he recently had on a different pod? Um,
Mm.
so Nate Robinson, some highlights of Nate Robinson's career. He won the dunk contest one year. I think he fought one of the Logan Paul, one of them.
So
So
yeah,
it's
he got
like,
knocked out.
yeah, but it's like, all right. I mean, I don't remember a ton about Nate Robinson. I know you played, but so he talks about how he hates Doc Rivers. And he said specifically it was something like he was one start away from getting like a $2 million bonus, and he didn't play. And he was all upset about it. And he's like, I hate that guy. Like, why wouldn't he do that? But I kind of took it as a different way. It was like, all right, well, Nate Robinson, I never really remember you as being like an all-star or a clutch player or anybody that was like really big time on a team. You had a role and you played, and I remember your name, so there was obviously something to that. But the fact that, I don't remember the stats of that game that Nate Robinson set, but the fact that Doc sat him, maybe it was more into the fact of like, it's more important that the team has success than you get your extra $2 million, because let's face it, all these guys are millionaires. Like, even guys making veteran minimums, you're making millions of dollars in your career. So, it's an incentive to, like you said, push yourself in the playoffs, make yourself into a situation that's going to make sense. And Nate Robinson saw it the other way. You took $2 million from me. It's like, yeah, but maybe he was trying to get you to be better, and maybe he was trying to get you to do things that you weren't doing. Yeah, losing $2 million, that's something that I'm never going to know what that feels like. To me, it would seem more devastating, probably, but I hope so. I mean, Beasley really had a really good year, but there are other things that he has to do. To your point, he's like 27 years old. He is coming for another contract. Show that you can do more than just be a spot up three shooter, because that is a different level of NBA player and the type of money you're going to make. That type of guy is the 10-ish $1 million range. Uh, with the way contracts are, Beasley could be playing for a $20 million contract. I don't think the Bucks should pay him $20 million, but that is part of the conversation. So it's interesting that you brought that up, and maybe that's playing a factor in it.
Yeah. The other thing that Doc did that obviously he listened to our podcast is he played Ajax. We just said just play Ajax. We didn't say like start him, play him 20 minutes, just play him. And there was a game or two where we had 3 or 4 guys out. So maybe that was like an easy way to get Ajax on the court. Although we've seen a couple games like that where we assumed Ajax was going to get out there and he didn't. So finally Doc did it. He put him out there. Ajax had 7 minutes, one game, 16 minutes the next, 4 minutes the next, 10 seconds against Boston. But he was in there. But I mean, the fact that he put him in, I think it was the last defensive play of the first half is when he put him in. So he put him in like specifically for defense. Uh, I still just like that. At least you're recognizing that he's a good defender that has a role on this team. And then today he was in there. I missed today, so I don't know how much he played. But that's 5 games in a row that he's getting playing time. And a couple of those games, we did have all of our starters in the game. So that's good. Do you think that's going to continue? Do you think he's going to get playoff minutes?
I mean, possibly. Steve Novak was talking about how this kind of the same thing. Steve Novak, clearly big time listener, talks about the pod all the time. But he was mentioning that Ajax was getting the more minutes, and he really liked to see it, and he's doing the same things that we may have talked about before, where maybe he was a little bit in the doghouse as a rookie, and Doc did the same thing that he did with PC, where it was like, do these things and you'll get the minutes. And Ajax just has always kind of come across to me as the guy that's like, all right, you tell me what to do and I'm going to do it. Like, I'm not going to fight you on it. Like, do whatever you need me to. He doesn't seem to complain about getting 10 seconds in a game. Doesn't seem to be complaining about anything. When he goes out there, he just balls it out. And in this game, I didn't see him until the third quarter. But he came in and he brought a spark. And once again, it was like the lead starts to get to that point where you're just like, we at no point were we ever losing. We weren't really in fear of losing this game against Orlando, which was great to see. But yeah, he brought Ajax in. It was kind of a Bobby moment where it's like, we need a spark, and he comes in, and you can tell that some of the veterans really like him. They were setting up some shots for him in the corner. There was a play where he was wide open in the corner and he missed it pretty bad. They got the steal and they came back and they gave it right back to him and he nailed it. And it was like, that's the type of thing that you don't really see a rookie being able to get the respect of a veteran to be like, you're there again. You just missed pretty bad, but I'm going to give it back to you. I think a lot of things or a lot of teams would just be like, no, like I'm just going to keep it this time, rookie, because you just didn't do it. I don't know if it's a change to the NBA, but I love seeing it. It's great. And I think, is he going to get some real minutes? I think it depends on the matchup. It really does. Again, he didn't play a lot versus Boston. He didn't need to. I don't know that he fits Doc's method with Boston for sure, but I think he would definitely make sense in Atlanta, a Chicago, and a Indiana series, maybe even a Cleveland series. Makes sense to me. So I guess long answer to I'm gonna bet some futures on Ajax getting some playoff minutes here.
There was a play at the end of one of the games that we lost. It was close at the end. Ajax was playing full, basically just guarding the inbounder 94 feet, but it wasn't like a full court press or anything. That was like just him, one man pressure, and he was just relentless down there and bothered the pass into it, and then bothered the guy receiving the ball, and ended up it going out of bounds off of the other team and Buck's ball. He caused a turnover. And just a situation that you wouldn't expect that to happen. That like it was like the game was essentially over, but not quite. And that turnover, I guess, kind of gave us a chance, basically, and we ended up losing the game. But just that kind of effort, that I'd say Pat Bev gives that kind of effort. He does that. I don't know if anyone else really does that on this team. Certainly not as effective. Maybe sometimes they're trying. I mean, sometimes Beasley will be up 94 feet, but he's kind of there just to be there, kind of create some pressure, but he's not really like in their face, actually possibly turning the ball over. It's really just Pat Bev and Ajax who do that. So I love that. And I love, even like I said, where he was just in for 10 seconds. So even just throw him in for a play here or there at the end of the half or whatever to do things like that. Because like I said, just Pat Bev's really the only other guy who's going to do that. And it might get us another possession, and that might mean a win instead of a loss.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing. It's I think I've gone back to some of our podcasts and I talk about the casual NBA fan, but look, it's reality. There are people that are really invested in the NBA. They watch almost every game. They know every player. And then there's people that like, hey, they turn it on and maybe they're like, well, I don't like it as much as this sport or that sport, because I don't think they understand, how much of a strategic game it really is. They see people coming up and down the court pretty quick and don't really understand it. But the reality is, kind of to your point, is there's a lot of situational plays in the NBA that are just overlooked. And when you're getting to a point of a game where it's close, let's say it's a game 6, a game 7, something that's going to end a series or extend a series or something like that, having someone like him to be able to, hey, like, you might come in for this one defensive play. And if I can put you and Pat Bev out at the same time, that might disturb the offense enough to get that turnover, which is exactly what we need to put it in the hands of our scorers. And, it's kind of nice that his minutes are sporadic, because if you have somebody that's playing all game, they start to understand about it. You understand how they're playing, you understand their negatives, their positives. Having some guy like this that you can come off the bench and just disrupt somebody so bad that you can get that turnover, that could be a really key piece in the playoffs in the long run. And I don't know. I think he's a great fit. I hope to see him get some more minutes. I don't anticipate a game where he's going to play like over 20. I just don't see it. But these situations are just, I think he's going to be key for him.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. Something we'll have to look for. So the Bucks they won the last 2 games, but before that, they lost 4 in a row. They lost 6 out of 7 to some really bad teams. Essentially a G League team, and one of those teams didn't have a starter. I think all 5 starters maybe weren't playing.
Yeah.
It's kind of like the Memphis Grizzlies game before the All-Star break. So it was looking pretty bad. We did win the last 2 games, but considering that losing streak that we had, and now with Giannis hurting his calf, thankfully not a major injury, but it looks like he'll be out a couple of weeks. Probably good chance he'll miss a game or two of the playoffs. What is our concern level for the Bucks heading into the playoffs, which is really the only thing we care about? We don't even care about the regular season, but it's informing us about this team. It's telling us about this team, and yeah, I wish we felt better about it. But how good do you feel about it? How concerned are you?
So I think number one, NBA playoffs are some of the best playoffs you're ever going to watch. Period. And I think the reason the NBA gets a little bit of a knock from some people is that you watch the NFL, the regular season and the playoffs, they're all great across the board. But the NBA playoffs are so good, and the regular season just gets discounted. There's more games than the NFL. You get to this time where it's like, you're playing for seeding, and it's like some people don't care about that. It's like at the end of the day, it's like Milwaukee's in the playoffs. Like, end of story. They're in the playoffs. They have a shot at winning the championship. Where they play, yeah, that's going to factor. But to some people, that just is kind of boring to watch. So those are like the beginnings of kind of where we're at. On a concern level, obviously there's concern when you lose your best player, who's arguably, one of the best 2 players in the NBA right now. We can't sit here and be like, are the Bucks better off without Giannis? Look at what they did without him, right? That would just be, stupid thinking. But at the end of the day, my concern level is low because number one, it's not a major injury. He's not out the entire playoffs. Okay. Number two, we have a really, really good team of veteran players. The rookies we have are solid. I'm not expecting to rely on them, but this game was a great example. Number one, our second best player, almost any team in the NBA right now would trade massive assets to get Dame Lillard to play on their team. I mean, there's hardly a team you can name that would be like, I wouldn't at least field the call to talk about getting Damian Lillard. So you lose Giannis and you still got him. So it's like right off the bat, that should ease your fears a little bit. Giannis not being there, you still have Dame, you have Chris, you have Lopez. Right off, those are fantastic players. It's not going to discount the fact that Giannis isn't out there, but we've seen in the year that we won the championship, we can win without Giannis for a game or two. We can't win a series without him. That's the only fear I have going into this. I think when we're going into the playoffs, if we are matched up with someone like Philly, it's the only team that gives me a little bit of pause because Giannis can really impact Embiid a lot. And the other teams don't have that same big that we have to concern ourselves with, at least on maybe the defensive side. But I guess on a scale of 1 to 10, 10 being absolute panic, like we're done for, I personally am around like a 2 or a 3. I still think we have amazing players. You look at the game tonight, they had a lineup where it was Dame, Crowder, Pat Bev, Beasley, and Lopez. So kind of your small ball lineup that you were thinking of, but Lopez instead of Giannis. They did a pick and roll to perfection because every defender was so worried about all those shooters. And even Lopez being on there, be like, okay, well, he can hang out on 3 and nail it. So they left the entire middle of the court open. And then sure enough, there goes Lopez, pick and roll, easy layup all day. So on some of these teams, I think we match up very well. I think if Giannis only misses 2 games, my fear levels is really minor personally. I think the team is very well rounded. We've been playing way better than we have. We start to lose more than 2 games. Yeah, my concern will rise. But I'm okay right now. How about you?
Yeah, I guess I'm mixed. I guess a couple things. So if you look under Doc, I think we're 17 and 17 now, I believe, under Doc. We've only had 8 games with all starters from my count. Maybe I looked back and looked at everything. Maybe I missed 1 or 2, but I believe it's 8 games. So 8 out of 34 games, we had all our starters. That's not that many. So we have not been able to get into a rhythm in the second half of the season. And so that's in addition to the strength of schedule, I think that's the main factor as to why the second half of the season has really been so disjointed. And, we're a 500 team as opposed to 30-13 under Griffin. I think that's really the big piece of it is they haven't been able to play together. I mean, it's hard to just throw guys together and just go out there and play. And this is the first year we've had Dame. It's not like they have a couple of years to fall back on. Like Chris is able to kind of jump in and play, especially with Giannis. I mean, him and Giannis have amazing chemistry, but they've played together for 8-10 years, whatever it's been. So especially with Dame being new, it's just, I think, hard for them to learn how to play together, and just playing a few games together isn't enough. So there's some concern on my side that we haven't had that full season of them playing together, learning what each other wants to do. So, they have a little bit of that, but especially since the second half is the part that's been so disjointed, I wish that was flipped. I wish the second half was when we were playing together and the first half was like a bad season. So that does concern me a little bit. Hopefully they can figure it out, and the few games they've played together is enough for them to kind of learn what each other, how they work together and what each other do best, and work off of each other. So we'll see on that. The other part is obviously Giannis being hurt. Yeah, that I agree with you there. I'm not too concerned if he's only going to miss a game or two. I think we certainly can win a game or two. Can we win a whole series? I think maybe depending on the matchup in the first round, we could. I don't think we'd win a second round matchup, probably. So, yeah, getting Giannis back makes me feel good. And the thing about Giannis being out, which you alluded to, is we're able to spread the court. When Giannis is in, they're just going to let him go to the perimeter and they're going to protect the rim. So it's kind of harder for Dame to go to the rim and get those layups when Giannis is in the game. And Dame and Brooke have great chemistry together. So that pick and roll with Dame and Brooke might work even better without Giannis in the game, actually, possibly. So there are some advantages when Giannis is out. Obviously, it's much worse, but it's not like we're a bad team. And we have Dame, one of the best players in the NBA, Chris out there cooking. So we can definitely win without Giannis, especially if it's a couple games. And I think winning the past two games is a big deal because the which we'll get into in a few minutes here, but the playoff seeding. So the fact that we won those couple of games, I think puts us in a better position heading into the playoffs because it's pretty tight, 2 through 6 at least, 2 through 8. Honestly, it's like pretty tight. So yeah, so I guess my concern level is maybe a 5, just because the overall season, second half of the season, it was just so disjointed with so many injuries, and they just never really clicked fully. And can they just turn it on? Like, I'm not sure if they can just turn it on. So we might need to get a little lucky with the matchup, with just kind of working through a first, second round series and hopefully win. And hopefully we're clicking by the time we get to the Eastern Conference Finals, hoping we get there in the championship series.
It's the fact that we have had these starters together for 8 games is an optimistic way to look at it is it's our superpower. Teams can't really game plan on a team that's only really played 8 games together, right? You're like, well, what am I looking at? I can look at this run. I can look at that stretch of games. All right, well, I only have 8 games where these guys are playing together, and if they come in and get healthy at the same time, like I don't know how to play against that. The Milwaukee Bucks in this situation right now are the Miami Heat. And I say that because the Miami Heat are just barely in these playoffs, right? They're still in the playoffs, but they're just in there. But you listen to anybody and they're like, what's the Miami Heat? Here comes playoff Jimmy and it's the Heat and you got the great coach and all these reasons that you should be optimistic about the Miami Heat coming in here. Okay, well, on paper, they didn't have a great year, right? There were some injuries. There were some chemistry issues. There was a lot of things that weren't working. Seems really familiar to another team that we've been watching. Lots of chemistry issues, lots of, expectations and just not really living up to them. So the fact that Milwaukee's still sitting at the number 2 seed we are in a better position than Miami. And the reality is, what if Jimmy Butler doesn't show up in the playoffs? It's not impossible to think that Miami could get swept. It's not impossible. You can't think about that. Their supporting cast is fine. They have an excellent coach, but they have not been winning games. They've been losing games down the stretch like we have. They're putting everything in on the fact that Jimmy Butler is going to come back and lead them into the finals like he did last year as an 8 seed. I don't know that he's got it in him again. I'm not betting against him. I'm not that confident, but you look at the Milwaukee Bucks, and people are discounting us because of, well, they haven't played together. I don't know. I think maybe I'm just eternally optimistic about this team. When our starters are together, we look unstoppable. I mean, look at the Boston game just recently. Boston was playing everybody but Porzingis, and we've talked about how we're not in love with Porzingis here, but at the same time, Boston came out to that game to win. They didn't mail it in, and they got blown out. And then they eventually sat back. Oh, well, we didn't have Porzingis. And all right, yeah, I still think he would have gotten absolutely crushed. So I'm holding on to that optimism. I think that there is, of course there's fear. I'm not going to be an idiot here and sit here and say that losing Giannis for even a small stretch of time isn't a concern. But I guess my last little note here is Damian Lillard was a top 75 NBA player of all time, playing on Portland teams where he did not have a great supporting cast, and he was asked to do everything. And the supporting cast here is better than what he had, and even without Giannis, it's still better than what he had. So maybe we just give him the keys for a couple games and be like, let's see what happens. And even Dame and Chris haven't played a lot together, so maybe the two of them together might work out well. So I don't know. I'm still hanging on by maybe only a 2, maybe a 3, and we'll see where we go.
Yeah, a couple of stats here that I kind of give, I think, some optimism too for when we have to play without Giannis. We're negative 5.2 net rating with Giannis off the court this season, but with Dame on the court without Giannis, it's negative 0.3, essentially even. So Dame, like we're talking about, he can run this offense, run this team without Giannis on the court pretty effectively. I mean, that's not +5 or something like that, but it's much better than the negative 5.2. That's Giannis off the court total. The other thing I found interesting is, let's assume 4 of the starters are Dame, Pat Bev, Middleton, Lopez. So if that's 4 of the starters, those 4 have only played 13 possessions together without Giannis all season. And I'm guessing those 4 are going to be on the court with some fifth guy. They played a few with Portis and a few with Beasley, and that's it. And it's a horrible rating, but I mean, it's 13 possessions, so it doesn't really mean anything. So that's kind of, especially with Pat Bev kind of getting that starting role now. That's interesting because we'll see some lineups that haven't even played together like all season. That's kind of crazy to think about. We might be starting a lineup that has played 5 possessions or something like that. So kind of interesting, but yeah, overall I'm pretty optimistic, especially some of the potential first round matchups. Like today, we just played Orlando, who wants to win, and we beat them by 20 points or whatever we did. So yeah, not feeling too bad.
So with the playoffs lining up, let's get into where you think we're going to see people ending up, who you think our matchup might be. The games we just played, we played Boston, who's up on us. We're not catching them, but we crushed them. Orlando's in the 4 spot, and we crushed them. I guess let's start with you. Where do you kind of see things falling in place here? Where do you think is the most likely matchup at this point? Who do you have fear of? What are your thoughts heading into the last couple games?
Yeah, so right now it's Boston, Milwaukee, New York, Orlando as the top 4. I think that's going to remain the top 4. I think it's possible the Knicks take over the Bucks, if we lose the next couple of games. But yeah, I'm going to say Bucks, Knicks are 2-3. one way or the other. And I think Magic stay at 4. The Cavs have been free falling.
Yeah.
And so they're at 5 right now. They're a game ahead of Indiana, who's at 6.
Yeah, Cleveland has lost 8 of their last 11, and they play Indy in 2 days.
That's a big game. Yeah, that game might decide it.
Yeah.
But yeah, they've been free falling, so I guess I'd pick Indiana as the 5. I'll say Cleveland stays at the 6, and Philly ends up at the 7 with the Heat at 8. That's really because the Heat are 7 games up on the Bulls. The Bulls and the Hawks, who cares?
So, quick thing here's what's going on with the Bulls and the Hawks, because I want to talk about this. So, Atlanta, you have Trae Young, our favorite little rat-faced boy, coming back, cleared for practice. I don't know if he's going to play the regular season, I should say. If he comes back, I mean, you talk about just messing up chemistry. That's a thing, but at the same time, Atlanta's barely in there, so I don't know how he can mess up anything. But at the same time, Chicago is like an absolute joke right now. It is absolutely insane. I mean, if you want to do a deep dive podcast into the Chicago Bulls right now, I mean, strap in for a multi-part series, because number one, they are paying guys ridiculous contracts that they are just like
Zach LaVine.
Oh, yeah. They're stuck. And then last night I sent this video, but for those that didn't see it, Andre Drummond gets a steal and he passes it up to Torrey Craig. Torrey Craig, down 9, decides to throw the ball off the backboard. The problem being with, chemistry issues, not only did Torrey Craig thinks he's getting his own alley-oop, but Andre Drummond, who got the steal and is chasing, thinks it's being set up for him. It leads to both of them trying to dunk and missing, and then just continuing to lose the game. So, I mean, Chicago and Atlanta, if anybody loses to these two franchises at this point, I mean, you should just kind of blow it all up, because they are just so bad. I mean, I'm going to watch it just for the entertainment factor, but they can't seriously be sitting there. I just wrote on both of them, no chance, and underlined it. It's just like, there's just no way. I think, the way that you had everything set up, I agree. I think New York has a possibility of getting that 2 seed, which will probably be the greatest thing that's happened to the New York Knicks in 40 years. They're going to celebrate that for a long time.
Yes, they will.
They might hang a banner for it, for all I know. And then Orlando, yeah, they're pretty stuck at the 4, especially losing today. I don't know how that's going to impact anything. Indiana, yeah, I could see them jumping Cleveland. And like you said, and we touched on, Cleveland is just free falling badly. And the fact that they play Indiana, if Indiana beats them, that's going to be a problem. Philly, I do think, has a chance at that 6 seed. I wouldn't be overly shocked if they can do it. Embiid coming back, he's been playing really well. Miami is really the one that if I was placing bets on anything, I would avoid Miami, and I might regret that. And someone could play this back to me all they want, but I just don't think they have enough going into this series to really make a difference. I just don't see it. I just don't think they're an actual threat right now. It's too bad, because I like Spoelstra. I think he's great. I think he's a great coach. There's not really a lot of people on Miami that I dislike. Obviously, I don't like them because they beat the Bucks. But I don't know. I don't think this is the year for them. So I think it's really going to be coming down to serious contenders in the East. Boston, Milwaukee, New York, and Orlando are the top 4. Based on tonight, I would actually say I would eliminate Orlando and throw either Indy or Philly in there as the sleeper, as that 4th spot of who might make a run, just because, Indiana started hot. Maybe they can turn it back on. Philly getting Embiid back. You can't discount how good of a player he is. He might be able to carry that team. So that's kind of where I'm hanging out right now.
Yeah, I think Philly is, if I had to, I would say Boston, Milwaukee, Philly, and then maybe the Knicks too are kind of the main contenders. But yeah, Philly, that starting lineup with Embiid is one of the best starting lineups in the league. And so can they turn it on with him just coming back? I mean, it seems like maybe they can because they've been playing well for a couple games here. So yeah, I think there is some, fear there, but looking at the Sixers playoff history, there's maybe less concern. So
Yeah.
can Embiid, be a playoff player finally? Maxey's looking good. So can he do that in the playoffs? So we'll see. That's an interesting team to look at. A lot of pressure on them, especially Embiid. So I would bet against them, but I think we owe them respect because they've played very well. Embiid's had 2 incredible regular seasons in a row, minus the injury. So Philly. I don't. So in terms of like looking at the Bucks and what's kind of our ideal matchup, what's our ideal seeding situation here? I guess for me, the ideal would be Milwaukee as a 2 or a 3, and just basically I'd like to match up with Cleveland or Indiana.
Yep. Absolutely.
So I guess it kind of depends on where everything falls. So, but I'd like to be a 2 or a 3 because I'd like as much home court. So I mean, I guess ideally it'd be a 2, but it seems like Cleveland or Indiana is probably 5-6. So I think we're going to have to be a 3 seed for that, actually. But I think I'd rather have the 3 seed and play like Cleveland or Indiana than have the 2 seed and play Miami or Philadelphia, if that's how it ended up.
Yes, I agree. I mean, there is a point to what you said in the last episode where you were like, if we're going to win the whole thing, we got to run through Miami. We got to run through Philly. Might as well just do it. But yeah, I mean, with a Giannis injury, it changes it a little bit. Getting a Cleveland team that is falling apart would be ideal. Indiana is a shell of their former self. I mean, those are easier matchups. Orlando doesn't strike fear to anybody. I think, as far as network ratings are concerned, they are praying that Boston, Milwaukee go to the Eastern Conference Finals. If not, Philly or Miami, which would mean an upset early. But I can't imagine that they're looking at Orlando and Cleveland and hoping that anything happens there. I guess the team that I want to avoid the most is actually New York. I have more concern of us matching up with New York against this team than Boston. And a big part of it is the recent game, but I've watched Bucks-Knicks games. I went to a Bucks-Knicks game. The Knicks are good. Brunson is good. And I'm worried what a playoff Jalen Brunson looks like. I don't really fear playoff Tatum. I don't feel playoff, Porzingis. We've talked about that. I don't know. Maybe we get absolutely crushed by Boston. I look like an idiot. But again, New York is probably the team I fear the most. But I agree with you that, if we can get Cleveland or Indiana, that'd be ideal.
Yeah, Brunson is awesome against everybody, but he's definitely been a Bucks killer this season. And, we struggle with those guards who are really good. So Brunson's been great and he's crushed us. And so hopefully with Pat Bev starting, that might affect things a little bit. And maybe Ajax gets some minutes to kind of get in his face. But we might have to play around with some things that we haven't been doing against that Knicks team if we do match up against Brunson. But I do fear Boston more. And even in the game, we just crushed them by 20, whatever. They had a lot of open threes, and that was without Porzingis in the lineup. So if Boston's hitting their threes, it's really difficult to beat them. So can they do that for 4 out of 7 games? Hopefully not. If they get hot, that's going to be real tough because we're having trouble running around guarding all their open shooters who are basically everyone on the court can shoot. So that I think that win was a little misleading with how many open shots that they missed. I think they shot like 35% or something. So it's not like they shot horribly that game, but I think we shot 10 or 15% better than they did. And that was the difference at a certain point in the game. It was like a 10-point game in the fourth quarter. And then maybe that would have been a tie game if the 3-point shooting was just a little bit different. And so that's just the deal with Boston. They shoot a lot of threes, so that's going to be a big factor. But they are 62-17, so it's not like hit or miss. I mean, they usually
Sure.
win.
Yeah.
But the game the other day when we beat them was great. There's a lot of good things to see, but I still had a little bit of fear with just how many open shots we gave up. So I'd like to say, and that would be just an epic showdown. If we did meet up with them in the Eastern Conference Finals, that's the dream scenario. Them and then match up with Denver in the championship would be just two awesome matchups back to back. I'm really hoping that happens. Looking at what it's looking like is assuming we get past our first round series and the Knicks do theirs. It looks like we'll probably match up with them if we're going to be the 2 and the 3 seeds. So hopefully we can match up. I mean, they don't have Randall, so they're missing one of their best players. But at the same time, they've been playing pretty well without him. So you're right. I mean, they are an opponent worth respect and certainly shouldn't look past them.
Yeah, I mean, to your point of the last pod, though, if you're going to be winning it, you gotta run through the tough teams, and there's enough people out there that just don't give any credit to the Eastern Conference at all. It's everyone says the West is better, but at the same time, it's like the West puts up a lot of wins. I mean, they're teams that are sitting at like 8, 9, 10 would have been like a third, fourth seed in the Eastern Conference. Yeah. But at the same time, it's like, well, I don't know what that necessarily means. It's like maybe the Eastern Conference is harder because they're not getting any wins. They see it the other way. It's like, oh, well, the West is just killing you. I don't know. We'll see. I think the thing is, to echo your point, Boston does get a lot of open threes. And the problem being you have guys like White and Pritchard who killed us in the past. And that's the type of thing where it's like, if you can't figure that out, that's the problem. Because if they're off, that's it. People will say like, a team like Boston that lives and dies by the three. If you're not hitting it, that's going to be your downfall. Their big men they have big guys, but I don't know that they don't provide everything. It's definitely a 3-point shooting team. New York is the one that, without Randall, that's a huge hole too. But Brunson has just been so good. So I don't know. I'm looking forward to this. I think there's a lot of really good matchups. I disagree with some people that are saying, wake me up when the Eastern Conference Finals are over. I'll just be watching the Western Conference. But I don't know. I think we got some really interesting matchups with a lot of big playmakers. I didn't do a ton of research on the West right now, but what do you got as far as potential matchups over there?
Yeah, the West is kind of fascinating. I mean, you got in the 7 through 10, so the play-in games right now is Phoenix, Sacramento, the Lakers, and the Warriors. I mean, that's just Phoenix, who traded for Beal, and everyone was talking about they're going to be, they're going to win the championship. They're definitely one of the top 3 teams. They're 7th in the West, probably in the play-in game. That's, I mean, when the trade happened, I wasn't excited about it. I thought it was kind of a weird trade because they have 3 guys who do the same thing. So I wasn't actually one of those people thinking they're like a top 3-4 team. But I am still surprised that they're not a top 6 team in the West. I mean, the Pelicans are ahead of them. Dallas is the biggest surprise to me. I did not trust. I mean, I just don't trust Kyrie Irving. I mean, who does at this point? And the rest of their team just didn't look great. Obviously, you have Luka. He's great. But you need a team. And I just didn't trust that team at all. But they're a 5 seed right now. They've played much better than I anticipated. So Dallas is the biggest surprise to me in the West. Right now as a 5 seed. I mean, it looks like the first 3 are Minnesota, Denver, OKC, for sure. I don't know where it'll land. I don't know. I didn't research who's playing who, but those are the top 3. Then it's the Clippers. I think the Clippers are going to be 4. Dallas is going to be 5. And then it's really the next 5 teams. It's kind of the question mark. So it's really that race for the 6 is like the Pelicans and the Suns are kind of fighting for that spot. So I think the Pelicans are going to keep it. I don't trust the Suns. I don't know who they're playing, but that's just crazy to me that it might be the Suns, Lakers, and Warriors all in the play-in.
I agree that the Pelicans are one of those teams where it's like, how are you good? Like, I just don't get it. Because, I mean, I was never a Zion fan, period. Like, I came out, I'm like, all right, this is going to be another Blake Griffin situation where he'll maybe give you a year or two that's good. And then he's kind of just going to fall apart. And I don't know, but, they're hitting it. I mean, CJ McCollum is fantastic, apparently. So, I mean, I'm still shocked at that. Luka, I don't watch a lot of Dallas games, but I always thought he was so good because he just had to be. He was kind of like, Dame in the West. It was like nobody else good on this team. I have to put up all the points. I have to do all the thing. But then you look at the team and you'd be like, well, you have Kyrie, you have some other good players. Like, how are you not doing this? But they're starting to put it together. So that's interesting. I'm kind of hoping for the fall of the Phoenix Suns, mainly because I kind of want this situation where you create your own super teams to die. Bradley Beal seems like he was talked about as a trade target for teams for like 20 years. I feel like I watched that guy get like 7 Supermax contracts in Washington before he was finally traded. And it's like, how old is this dude? And like, where does he fit? You can't somehow just be happy having Devin Booker and Kevin Durant on the same team. Like, I don't understand that. Like, build around that with some other pieces. But then you put in Beal, and now like, it's just, I don't get it. It's just crazy to me. Lakers, whatever. I'm kind of done with them. They're always going to be entertaining. They're going to be a draw. I feel bad for AD because I think he's a good player. I think LeBron's just older. He's just not the same team he is before. But I just don't want to hear people talking about how great the Lakers are at all. And the Warriors are. I mean, that's just the craziest story. I mean, it's like you feel like they just won it. They have pretty much the same team. But I mean, I think the Warriors are just the definition of age catching up to you, because they are pretty old. They have been around for a while. What are you really expecting? Whereas you look at Minnesota and OKC, especially as young teams, that just seem to be kind of gelling at the right time and playing really well and knowing their place. I mean, look, I'm very excited about the playoffs just in general. I think the West probably does have the big power teams. Especially in the playoff tournament. I talked about Chicago and Atlanta already. I have more interest in the Western Conference playing tournament than the East. But yeah, this is going to be pretty interesting for sure.
So if it is Phoenix, Sacramento, Lakers, Warriors in the play-in, what 2 teams advance?
I'm gonna say, if I was betting money, I would say Sacramento and Golden State are going to advance. And I think it's because, Golden State has the team chemistry. They know what they are. They can get hot. The Lakers are, I don't know, the Lakers are the Lakers. They can put it together and sometimes they can fall apart. And I just think that they get off track and I think they could lose that easily. Sacramento's a young team, and I think they have a lot of kind of like Island of Misfit Toy type players that were like, they didn't find a place anywhere else. They go to Sacramento, it seems to work, and I think it fits for them. So I think that's where I'd probably bet my money that that's going to happen. I think the Lakers, I mean, they were a good draw. I just don't see them going deep. I'd actually be surprised by that. And Phoenix, I think, is just a disaster. I think they're like the Cleveland of the East, that it's going to be like, kind of can't believe you're in this because it just didn't work this year.
I think I'm going to go opposite of you and say Phoenix and the Lakers. I partly say Phoenix because I think they're going to be a 7 or 8 seed. And so they'll have like 2 chances at it. So really they'll just need to win 1 out of 2 games. And the Lakers, I don't know. I just trust LeBron and AD. I think that team's good. I'm surprised that they're not a little bit higher in the standings. And they just played the Warriors and lost, but the Warriors shot crazy. Draymond Green was 5 for 5 from 3-point range in the first quarter, maybe first half. Like, that never happens. Yeah. And everybody else shot really well, which, of course, Steph and Clay are going to do that a lot. But they just had a game that I don't think happens all the time. So, of course that could happen. But overall, I think the Lakers are better than the Warriors. So that's why I'm going to go with the Lakers. So Lakers and Suns is my pick, but who knows what's going to happen, and who knows how it's going to land. I mean, the Lakers are a half game behind Sacramento, so they might take that 8. They might have 2 chances at it. Warriors haven't lost; they're just on a winning streak. So, yeah, the West is kind of crazy, and it's fun to see what's going to happen there.
I think as I get older, I have a hard time with LeBron. I've talked about this before. I need a break from him. Everything the guy does just rubs me the wrong way anymore. I just can't support him. I mean, look, I'm not an idiot. He's a great player, and there was a time where I thought, wow, this guy's so cool to see. But look, the fact that he is ducking Giannis every possible opportunity he can, that's the game he has to sit out. I never like the people that self-appoint their own nickname. I watch a video where they're like, what are the greatest NBA nicknames of all time? LeBron the King. He gave that name to himself. Like, sorry, like that's dumb. It just doesn't work. Like, a nickname doesn't work when you just create it yourself. We all know that T-Bone became G-Bone and Coco because he couldn't make it work. LeBron just had the charisma to make the King work, but I don't know. I just can't get behind him. I need my LeBron break. So we'll see. I mean, we'll have a gentleman's bet to see who's correct going into the West.
All right, gentleman's bet, which means $1,000. Is that what that
$1,000? Yeah.
Okay. Okay. I think that's about it. I guess I'll add a couple of quick statistic nuggets here. I was just kind of looking at lineups. A couple of interesting things. Looking at Denver, they were without Jokic minus 11.3 without Jokic on the court, which was, I guess, kind of surprising that they're that bad without him and that good with him. I don't have that number in front of me. It was like plus 12. I texted you earlier with it. That's such a huge difference. I didn't compare that to every other team, but that seems like a pretty significant difference on off numbers. And, I guess that's why he's talked about as the best player in the league. But especially interesting just looking at the Bucks and how important you'd think Giannis is to the team. And what did I say before? We're minus 5.2, I think, without Giannis. Mm-hmm. So more than double that without Jokic for Denver. Just how important he is to that team. And then the other thing, I was looking at Boston, and they are just, if you take out any one of their starters, the worst that they are is plus 7.4. It's like, wow. No matter who, like take one guy out and they're totally fine. So they're just such a complete team. They don't really have like one guy that's just so super important. Like Tatum and Brown are the 2 best players. Porzingis looks like is somewhat important. But yeah, I don't know. I mean, with any of them, they're just doing really well. If you take one guy out, it doesn't matter. So Boston's a tough team. You need to guard multiple guys, hope a couple of guys are off. Like the last time, not when we just played them, but 2 times ago when we played them, like Pritchard went off. It was just like unstoppable. It's like, What the heck is going on here? And yeah, they have a deep enough bench and have enough guys where they're going to be tough to beat in a 7-game series.
Yeah, it's very surprising. Boston, to your point, we just saw that Drew Holiday got a 4-year, $135 million extension, which is tough to see. But it is what it is. But yeah, it's I don't know that he is like a must-have player for them. I also don't know how they pay him. But as I say that, I also kind of realize, like, all right, well, if Drew Holiday is our Chris Middleton and Tatum is our Giannis and Brown is our Dame, it's like, okay, that's how you pay people. But yeah, it's really interesting. My little tangent on those is I'm going to talk about some of these NBA commercials that we've been seeing really quick because Jokic and Giannis both have new commercials that are fantastic. Their comedic timing is is just awesome, and those commercials work. It's Jokic walking a pony through a hotel with some other player that I can't recognize.
I have not seen that.
It's great. You got to check it out because the guy's like, the obvious joke. Well, maybe it's not obvious, but he's like, how do you just walk through a lobby with a horse? And he goes, well, this is a pony. And that's like all he says. And it's like, it's hilarious. And then there's the Giannis commercial where it's the Greek teak. And they're like, oh my gosh, you make everything in this store out of teak. And he goes, well, to be honest, it's mostly oak. And for some reason, I just find that super funny. And on the flip side, it's like I watched the commercial with SGA and where they're singing Christina Aguilera.
Is it him and Chet? Or
yeah, him and Chet. That's right. It just goes on too long. Like I understand they're singing the song, but it like almost goes from like, hey, it's a funny coincidence that we're quoting the song, to now I feel like you're singing like multiple verses, even though you're just finishing it. It goes way too long, and I just it's like it's a good try, but I see it way too much. It just doesn't work for me. I don't know what that
I've seen
that
it too
means.
Much. That's for sure.
Yeah, check out the new Giannis one. I saw it 4 times tonight, which was surprising, and the Jokic one I saw twice. It could just be a league pass thing, but both of those they're good. They're solid. The comedic timing hits. I don't know if this is a window to the playoffs by any means, but that's just my final thought on NBA commercials for the night.
Yeah, they should be the face of the NBA. Seems like the NBA is reluctant to totally make that happen.
Yeah.
But yeah, Jokic and Giannis, they're really likable guys. They've been loyal to their teams. They're everything we should want. Let's make them the face of the NBA. Yeah. I don't think they want to, actually.
Yeah.
Maybe that's part of the problem.
That's true. They're very comfortable like making hundreds of millions of dollars but not showing it off, and they're just very humble people. And I think that's definitely what makes them likable. It'd be weird to see Giannis pull up in a a Lamborghini, Maybach. I don't know what the popular cars are nowadays, but he's got an old Subaru and it works for him, and he that's him. That's what I like to see.
Definitely. All right. Well, we got 2 games left. Next time we meet, we'll be done with the regular season. So that should be fun. But yeah, we'll see how they do without Giannis these next 2 games. Email us at doubledribblebucks@gmail.com. Let's get some questions. Follow us on Twitter/X at PodDDB. And rate us and follow us, whatever podcast platforms you listen to. Until then, we'll see you next time. Let's go Bucks.